AITA for leaving my wife the moment she became disabled? I, 28M, met my wife, Sarah, 23F, 5 years ago, and from the very beginning, it felt like we were meant to be. We weren't just partners, we were a team. The kind of couple who didn't just sit around and let life happen, we chased it. We were always outdoors, always moving. Hiking, marathons, spontaneous road trips just for the thrill of it. Our weekends were spent conquering trails, setting new fitness goals, and dreaming about the next adventure. I used to joke that neither of us could sit still for more than a day without planning something exciting. It was that energy, that constant hunger for life, that made me fall so deeply in love with her. When I proposed 3 years ago, I wasn't just choosing a wife, I was choosing a lifelong partner in crime, someone who would always push me to be better, stronger, more alive. I truly believed nothing could ever come between us. But then, a year ago, everything changed. One moment, she was texting me about dinner plans, and the next, I was getting a call that shattered my world. A drunk driver had run a red light at full speed, hitting her car so hard that it flipped twice before landing in a crumpled heap. When I arrived at the hospital, I barely recognized her beneath the wires and machines keeping her alive. The doctors told me that while she had survived, her spine had suffered irreversible damage. Paralyzed from the waist down. No chance of walking again. I remember nodding as they spoke, but it felt like I had left my body, like I was watching someone else's nightmare unfold. The weeks that followed were a blur of hospital visits, physical therapy sessions, and trying to keep myself together while putting on a brave face for her. I told myself that I could handle this, that love was enough to get us through anything. I remodeled our home to make it wheelchair accessible, took time off work to help her through rehab, and did everything in my power to make her feel like she hadn't lost everything. But the truth was, she had. And she knew it. The woman who once thrived on movement, who was the first to drag me out of bed for a sunrise hike, now barely got out of bed at all. At first, I thought it was just the adjustment period, that she needed time to process her grief. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and nothing changed. She became a shell of the person I married. She refused therapy, pushed me away when I tried to encourage her, and shut out anyone who tried to help. Her frustration turned into anger, at the world, at the driver who hit her, at herself, and at me. Every conversation turned into an argument. If I tried to suggest ways to make things better, she accused me of pretending everything was fine. If I gave her space, she said I was abandoning her. No matter what I did, it was wrong. And slowly, I started to realize something I never thought I'd admit: I wasn't just losing her, I was losing myself. The breaking point came one night after yet another argument, though calling it that feels wrong. It wasn't an argument. Arguments imply that both people are fighting for something, but there was nothing left to fight for. It was just the same cycle, repeating over and over again. She would lash out, I would try to stay patient, she would accuse me of treating her like a burden, and I would swallow my words because I didn't have the heart to tell her that, deep down, I was starting to feel like one. That night, though, something was different. There was no yelling, no dramatic breakdown. Just a cold, detached silence. Then, out of nowhere, she looked at me, her voice flat and empty, and said, "You wish it was me who died instead, don't you?" I felt my stomach drop. I wanted to be horrified, to be angry, to tell her that she was wrong. But the truth, the dark, twisted truth I had been burying for months, was that for a fleeting, awful second, I didn't know if I could say no. Not because I wanted her dead, but because I missed the woman she used to be, the life we used to have. And I knew, no matter how much I wanted to fight it, that life was never coming back. That night, I finally admitted to myself what I had been trying to ignore: I couldn't do this anymore. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't selfless enough. Maybe I never had been. I sat her down and told her the truth, or at least as much of it as I could put into words. I told her that I loved her, that I would always love her, but that I couldn't be what she needed anymore. That our marriage had turned into something neither of us had signed up for, something suffocating and miserable, and if I stayed, we were both going to lose ourselves completely. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just sat there, staring at me with this hollow, exhausted expression, like she had known this was coming all along. And somehow, that made it even worse. I packed my bags that night and left. Within days, the fallout was absolute. Her family disowned me. Friends called me a coward, a selfish monster who abandoned his wife when she needed him the most. And maybe they're right. Maybe love is supposed to be unconditional, and I was just too weak to carry the weight of forever when it stopped looking the way I had imagined. But is it really so wrong to admit that I wasn't built for this? That I couldn't be what she needed without losing myself completely? I think about the man I was before the accident, full of life, passion, and hope, and I wonder, did I betray her by leaving, or did I save myself from a future where I was only ever going to be the villain in her story?
Story number 2. AITA for reporting my roommate for animal abuse and getting them arrested? When I, 25F, moved in with my roommate, Jess, 27F, I thought I had lucked out. She was friendly, responsible, and easy to live with, exactly the kind of person I wanted to share a space with. We weren't best friends, but we got along well, respected each other's boundaries, and for the first few months everything was great. Then she adopted a dog. A beautiful golden retriever named Toby. At first, I was thrilled. I love animals, and I thought it would be nice to have a pet around. But almost immediately, I started noticing red flags. Jess treated Toby more like a decoration than a living being. The first week, she was excited, posting pictures of him all over social media, talking about how she had always wanted a dog. But once the novelty wore off, her attitude changed. She left him crated for hours while she was out, sometimes overnight, only coming home briefly to toss food in his bowl before disappearing again. When she was home, she seemed annoyed by his presence. If he barked or whined for attention, she would snap at him. When he had an accident in the house, which was inevitable since she rarely walked him, she would shove his nose in it and scold him harshly. The first time I saw her smack him, I was stunned, but I told myself maybe she was just frustrated and would learn to be a better dog owner. But as weeks passed, I realized this wasn't just inexperience, it was neglect. Toby started to change. He wasn't the energetic, happy dog I had first met. He became anxious, withdrawn. His tail no longer wagged when someone walked through the door. He flinched whenever Jess moved too fast. He barely ate, and when he did, he scarfed down his food like he didn't know when his next meal would come. I started stepping in, taking him on walks when she wasn't home, sneaking him treats, giving him affection whenever I could. But it wasn't enough. The way he cowered whenever she raised her voice, the way he shook when she came near him, it haunted me. I tried to talk to her about it, told her Toby needed more care, more love. She rolled her eyes and laughed, saying I was being overdramatic and that he was her dog, not mine. She made it clear she didn't see anything wrong with how she treated him. And that's when I realized, if I didn't do something, no one would. The final straw came one evening when I got home earlier than expected. As I walked through the door, I heard whimpering, soft, desperate sounds that made my stomach drop. I followed the noise to the kitchen and froze. Jess had Toby by the collar, dragging him across the tile floor while he squirmed, his nails scraping helplessly against the ground. He wasn't fighting, he had completely given up. Just laying there, too scared to resist. Then, without hesitation, she smacked him across the muzzle. Hard. Shut the F*** up. She snapped, her voice sharp with irritation, as if he were nothing more than a broken appliance making noise. Something inside me snapped. I didn't say a word, I just turned, walked straight to my room, locked the door, and called animal control. My hands were shaking as I told them everything, detailing the abuse I had witnessed over the past few months. I even sent them the photos I had taken, the ones of Toby's untreated wounds, the empty water bowl I had refilled dozens of times, the way he curled into himself whenever she got near. They arrived within the hour. When Jess opened the door and saw the officers, she was confused. When they saw the state Toby was in, they took him immediately. And when they checked the records and saw the complaints from our neighbors about hearing disturbing sounds, they didn't just remove the dog, they arrested her for animal abuse. Jess lost it. She screamed at me as they led her away, called me a traitor, said I had no right to interfere. But it didn't end there. My phone has been blowing up ever since. Her friends, and even some of our mutual ones, are furious with me. They say I ruined her life over a dog, that she was just stressed and didn't deserve to be arrested. Our landlord wants her off the lease immediately, but since it was originally under her name, I might be forced to move too. Even my own parents told me I should have handled it privately, maybe given her one last warning instead of calling the cops. But what was I supposed to do? Just stand by and watch while she kept mistreating him? Maybe I should have confronted her one more time, given her a chance to change. Maybe I did overstep by going straight to the authorities instead of handling it differently. But then I think about Toby, about the way he flinched when she raised her hand, about how he was too scared to even look at her, and I wonder, did I go too far, or was I the only one who actually did the right thing?
Story number 3. AITA for telling my fiancé I'll always love my late wife more. When I, 34M, met my fiancée, Lauren, 30F, I was still carrying the weight of my past. 5 years ago, I lost my wife, Emily, to cancer. She wasn't just my partner, she was the love of my life, the person who understood me in ways I didn't think were possible. We met in college, and it was one of those effortless love stories where everything just made sense. We were young, ambitious, and had our entire future mapped out. But life doesn't care about plans. At 28, Emily was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. There was no warning, no gradual decline, just a devastating diagnosis that shattered our world overnight. We fought together, clinging to hope through surgeries, chemo, and late nights spent whispering about what our life should have been. But no matter how hard we fought, cancer didn't care. I watched the strongest, most vibrant person I knew fade into someone unrecognizable, her body failing while her spirit never stopped trying to protect me from the pain of losing her. And then, one day, she was gone. The silence that followed was suffocating. I went from being a husband to a widower in a single breath. The house that once felt warm and full of love became a mausoleum of memories. I stopped seeing friends, ignored messages, and barely functioned. For 3 years, I lived in the past, unwilling and unable to move forward. Dating wasn't even a thought. How could I love someone new when my heart still belonged to Emily? Then, 2 years ago, I met Lauren. She was different, kind, patient, and understanding in ways I never expected. She didn't push me to move on, didn't make me feel guilty for still grieving. She let me talk about Emily when I needed to, never making me feel like I had to erase my past to be with her. With Lauren, love didn't hit like lightning, it came slowly, cautiously, like rebuilding something fragile. I never had that head over heels, all-consuming feeling like I did with Emily, but I told myself that was okay. Love after loss would never be the same. Eventually, I proposed, and for the first time in years, I let myself imagine a future again. But as the wedding got closer, I noticed a shift in Lauren. At first, it was small, changing the subject when Emily's name came up, tensing when I told old stories. Then it became more obvious, she stopped asking about my past, and when I talked about Emily, she went quiet. I could feel the unspoken tension building between us, but I told myself she just needed time. Then, one night, she finally broke. Lying in bed, she asked me something that shook me to my core. "Do you think you'll ever love me as much as you loved Emily?" And that's when it happened, the moment I ruined everything. I hesitated. And in that hesitation, she had her answer. Her question hung in the air between us, suffocating in its weight. I knew what she wanted me to say. She wanted reassurance, a promise that I had fully given my heart to her, that Emily was my past and she was my future. But the truth was more complicated than that. I loved Lauren, I truly did, but love isn't something you can measure like a scale tipping from one side to the other. My love for Emily wasn't just about emotions, it was tied to history, to who I was before I lost her. And no matter how much I cared for Lauren, no matter how much happiness I had found with her, nothing could erase the fact that Emily had been my first, my greatest, my deepest love. And so I hesitated. Just for a second. But that second was all it took. I could see the shift in Lauren's eyes, the flicker of understanding that felt more like devastation. Still, I tried to salvage it. I told her it wasn't about more or less, that my love for Emily and my love for her were different, that she wasn't replacing anyone. I told her that what I had with her was real, meaningful, something I had chosen despite everything. But nothing I said mattered after that pause. She barely spoke for the rest of the night, just curled into herself, her back turned to me. And the next morning, everything between us had changed. Since then, there's been a distance between us that I don't know how to bridge. She still talks to me, still goes through the motions of wedding planning, but there's something missing, something fragile in the way she looks at me now, as if she's seeing me through different eyes. I can tell she's questioning everything. If she's making a mistake. If she'll ever truly have my heart. And I don't know what to do. Would it have been better to lie? To tell her what she wanted to hear, even if it wasn't completely true? I wonder if honesty was a mistake, if I should have reassured her no matter how complicated my feelings really were. But then I think about our future, about standing at the altar with her while knowing a part of my heart will always belong to someone else. Is that fair to her? Is it fair to me? I don't know anymore. Everyone tells me love after loss is possible, but no one tells you what to do when the person who saved you is afraid they'll never compare. Did I destroy our future by being honest, or was Lauren asking for something I could never truly give?